Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm super excited about the conversation that we have for you today. Some of you may have seen a few weeks ago at Efficiency Canada, we launched a petition at the House of Commons to recognize energy efficiency as a nation building priority. Since we've done that, and maybe I should say it skyrocketed above 2,000 signatures relatively quickly. And we really want to build that over the next several months. So if you haven't signed it yet, we'll post a link in the chat. We invite you to sign it and share it. And it has stimulated a whole conversation, both internally and also externally, around what does that mean? What does it mean for energy efficiency to be a nation building project? And one of the things that often comes out in that conversation is how energy efficiency really has the opportunity to benefit our communities and every community across the country. And so I started thinking about our ally network and our community and all of the great success stories of just how energy efficiency is improving our communities. And that inspired the conversation that we're going to have with you this afternoon. But before we jump into that, I do want to recognize that I'm joining you all today from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe peoples and the Huron-Wendat peoples in present-day Orillia, Ontario. And I always like to invite reflection on place and land, and especially in this conversation, since we're talking about community and how our work benefits our community, to really reflect and honor the traditional peoples of where each of us is joining us from. And for those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Lindsay Telfer, and I'm the Engagement Director here at Efficiency Canada. I have an awesome panel of guests today who I'm really excited to hear from, and because these discovery webinars go really fast, I'm gonna jump right into it. We have Joshua Sherrard from the Heat and Frost Insulators Union. We have Melinda Zyterek from Took Tree Passive Homes, and we have Tom Grokmal from Trim Tab. And they're going to share with us some of their success stories and lessons learned. And so welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you're joining us from. So again, the focus of this conversation really is about the impact and potential of energy efficiency in our communities. To get us started, I want to invite each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your story, and share with us a success story that really highlights the potential for change and the part of the sector that you're involved in. So we're going to start with Joshua. You're going to kickstart us. And we'll start from the east, I think, and head our way west. So Josh, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining, and thank you, Lindsay and the Efficiency Canada team, for inviting me for this. So I'm the Director of Energy Efficiency for the International Association of Heat and Frost Insulators. Our specialty is in the mechanical insulation trade. Our program highlights mechanical insulation energy efficiency in buildings. And as I was trying to write down some ideas for this webinar, it may sound biased now looking back at it, but we believe that mechanical insulation is one of the simplest and most immediate ways to impact our community and build stronger, more efficient communities. For me, coming back full circle and getting involved in this industry, the first assessments that I did was the schools that I went to as a kid and the schools that my kids are going to currently. So it really is a refreshing moment for me. We look at the mechanical insulation systems, and often what we find is maintenance happens at facilities, new construction happens, and not always is mechanical insulation part of that value engineering standpoint. Looking ahead, we're hoping to see that industry change, and we think that our work really will benefit and highlight that. A lot of our work happens at schools, hospitals, and community buildings. These are the spaces that serve generally our most vulnerable population. We think that's very fulfilling for our reasonings as to completing these assessments and doing this work. In schools, we've seen districts reduce their energy by 20-25% of their operating costs per year for fuel. This is supporting the environment of the buildings, making them more comfortable learning environments for students. And when the building's maintained and we can keep that temperature stable, it creates better conditions where students can stay focused, improves attendance and the overall health of the building, as well as the occupants. In the healthcare industry, the impact is even more critical. When we talk about vulnerable people, we don't always think about energy retrofits and how that affects the current occupants of buildings. So mechanical insulation has helped maintain consistent temperatures, improve reliability of the systems, and protects both patients and staff from unsafe potential work environments. And then community spaces, we've done a lot of work with municipalities and housing across multiple provinces. One of the real good feel-good stories for us is working with some provincial housing authorities. We work with one housing authority that across 41 of the residential spaces, we were able to create an energy assessment protocol that potentially saved them $65,000 a year annually in fuel costs. Now that savings is based on prior year's fuel costs. And as we're all well aware in the world we live in, fuel costs has changed rapidly in the last few weeks. So these savings are continuing to increase, unfortunately, because of the continued increase in the cost of fuel. This project was a great opportunity for them to save that with a very relatively quick return on investment of 1.9 years for a return on investment. And just to put that into perspective, it's about 125 metric tons of carbon being reduced as well. And something that we're really proud of for our program is the fact that we conserve that energy, we reduce the operating costs, but then we do conserve carbon as well. So 125 metric tons is approximately equivalent to taking 29 cars off the road or planting over 2,000 trees. So small project with a huge benefit for the community and everybody else moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh, and certainly set the tone for what some of those benefits are in our communities. We are going to head over to Melinda, who is north of me. I'm in Aurelia, and Melinda's just a little bit north of me. So, Melinda, over to you.
Thank you. And thanks for having me today. Melinda Zaderek from Tukji Passive Homes, founder company I founded with some family to help me do it a few years ago. And before that, I spent about a couple decades or more in the construction sector and the deep energy retrofit and energy efficient building sector. And through that work, realized that I wanted to accelerate the building and use some of the things I'd learned to really improve quality and quality control and create better jobs. So I created a panelization process and invented a panel that we now manufacture in our factory in Lake of Bays, Muskoka, an hour north of Aurelia, because we still talk in driving times on Canada. And so we've been doing that since about 2018. And we have structural insulated panels that we manufacture there that are all both low carbon, high performance building materials so floors, walls, roofs, we can do the entire enclosure and install windows for new builds, anywhere from single family up to multi-story apartment buildings. And we also have a retrofit panel. And so that's one of the things that this slide talks about a bit here. We did a research project with Natural Resources Canada with our retrofit panel. And there's a larger report available online where we took our retrofit exterior wrapping panel. That the strategy is inspired by the European energy sprung process that they have developed and made popular. So this is our version of it in Ontario. So we built the panels in our factory based on measurements of the existing building and shipped them and installed them on the Enercan Research Building. And they have sensors all over them and lots of ways of testing, as researchers do. And we're able to demonstrate the energy efficiency gains and the air tightness, which is, of course, key for energy efficiency. And we also have them monitored for humidity and moisture content and things like that to ensure that they're resilient as well. And they're also net carbon stores of upfront carbon rather than emitters. So we use materials that during the manufacturing process are not emitting more carbon than we're storing. So it's all cellulose and with reward insulation and wood, sustainably harvested wood, because the materials we use in building and retrofitting can unfortunately surpass the carbon and emission savings that we gain through energy efficiency retrofit reductions of the building over time as well. So both are very important to take a holistic approach to our way of doing things. We are looking to not just make buildings better, but use buildings as the catalyst to make our communities more sustainable, create better jobs, more access to broader people who aren't usually represented in the construction sector, hence having a factory with regular hours and ergonomic construction rather than job sites that start at 7 a.m. and end at 7 p.m. when the school and other caring responsibilities don't coincide. And also looking to make sure our business gives back to the community. So we're also a certified social enterprise. And we are working mostly with non-market housing providers these days. We still do single family homes, but in addition to panelization, we also provide services for a role that's sometimes called project integrator. So we can help bring together that whole team of people that's necessary to make sure that the project is successful.
Awesome. Thanks, Melinda. And now we're going to go south of me and over to Tom with Trim Tab. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Lindsay. Am I coming through okay? Great. Yeah, about as far south as you can get in Chatham, Ontario here, near Windsor. Although it's a rainy day, it's not very sunny. By way of background, I'm a professional engineer. I used to work for Enbridge Gas and Natural Gas Utility and led the design of energy efficiency programs for many years there. But about 3 years ago, I left my corporate job and started up a business called Trim Tab, which is focused all around energy retrofits. And there's maybe two unique aspects in my mind about Trim Tab. Number one, we're dedicated to serving the social housing space. We serve community housing providers, municipalities, and utilities. We're all about lowering operating costs. We're just as much, though, about just improving quality of life through raising housing standards, and that's where all those community benefits build from. Second unique thing about us is we provide a turnkey service on product delivery that's like really tailored for energy efficiency. So that includes the audit, the engineering design, paying grants and rebates, managing and handling installation, as well as the measurement and verification. It's like an EPC model, if you're familiar with forms of contracting. Now, in terms of success story, I want to share the one that really got Trim Tab into the public housing space. It just started a couple of years ago where I was networking within the community. And I got to know the board of directors of a very forward-thinking private nonprofit in our community called Chatham Hope. So Chatham, like I said, is in Southern Ontario, halfway between London and Windsor. They operate about 130 low-rise units. And they're very interested in pursuing a capital project that would allow them to renew some of their older homes. And so as we got spitballing about projects, they were educating me about the turnover process, about the process of tenants leaving and then new tenants coming in and how that's often when they do a lot of the repair of units. And so it just got me thinking that, hey, this is a good window of opportunity for retrofitting. And I say it's a narrow window though, because it stresses the fact that you don't have a lot of time to turn it over. They're under some constraints. So we were thinking, okay, what can we do with that window of opportunity? And so we conceived of a project that was really focused on air sealing. And we made it a goal of the project to get every unit that we turn over to a better than new construction standard. So we aim for Energy Star, and to do it without getting the place. I think that's a novel aspect here. We're not doing a net zero retrofit or a passive house retrofit. And we thought that was possible. By the way, in a retrofit space, typically what you're aiming for is 10% better, 20% better than your baseline but in this case, we really thought we could go for an actual absolute performance goal, because we believe by combining critical repair, weatherization measures, and the use of aero barrier, which is an air sealing technology typically used in new construction, we thought it was possible and we could do it in a reasonable amount of time. So we applied for funding, were able to get money from both the private and the public sector, and then have to do 12 turnovers, which was really great. So fast forward, 2 years later, we just wrapped up the project. We do have a case study, as you can see on the screen here, that we've just released. I would encourage you to read it. There's a lot of good things in there. But one of the things I'll just highlight is that what we share in this case study not only is the results, which we were successful. We got all 12 of our units to Energy Star. Actually, 8 of them we got to the net zero standard of air sealing. But we share the process that got us there. A lot of it was really just good process and attention to detail. And we share how that happened. Now, while the technical results are interesting, I think what's more inspiring is just the impacts on the tenants. And so what was really interesting was just how much it improves, I'd say, the air quality. When you make an effort on comprehensive air sealing, you combine that with putting in a ventilation system in, that sealing and ventilating, it really improved the air quality. It came through a lot of these tenant testimonials, and I'll share just the top one as a quick example. There's Victoria on the top. She was a tenant. We interviewed a couple months after we did a retrofit. She says, the air quality is much improved. I live with my sister and we both have severe asthma. We need to be cautious about the air we breathe. We can live and breathe in our unit without having to constantly use our inhalers. Place doesn't smell like smoke like other places we have rented. we have rented all our lives. That's pretty powerful. And I think in the space where we play, like in social housing in particular, a lot of housing is substandard. So there's really a tremendous opportunity here through energy retrofitting to just create a healthier environment that ultimately lead to better health outcomes. And it certainly is motivating for folks like us that work in the space to see this kind of response. And I'll stop there, Lindsay.
Oh, so awesome, Tom. Thank you for bringing in, we often call them co-benefits, right? But it's like the multitude of benefits that happen when you invest in these types of projects is, I think, one of the strengths of what we're talking about today. So I want to drill into these success stories a little bit more. And before I ask my next question, I see Melinda's already been quickly answering some questions in the Q&A. Please do use the Q&A box if you've got questions for our panels or want to know any more information. We'll draw on those in the last 10 minutes or so of our conversation today. And if you don't have a question, I still encourage you to look at the Q&A and vote some up, because if you add the thumbs and we get lots of questions, I do use those thumbs to gauge what questions we'll jump into. But before we get to those questions, I do want to drill into the success stories in a little bit more detail, because what I want to start to uncover are what are the factors that you think have contributed to the successes you're seeing in the communities that you're involved? What has helped enable those successes and enabled you all to do the fantastic work that you're doing? We're going to start with Melinda this time and then go to Tom and wrap up with Joshua. Melinda, kick us.
I think that one of the key things is the fact that, when we think about getting buildings to be better and serve our communities better, we really need to change a lot of the ways that we do things. And just changing one aspect of it, like just increasing R value, for example, that's not sufficient, nor does it really work. Like we know like air tightness and R value, for example. So if we're talking about completely changing our outlook and our ability to create sustainable communities, we have to consider the link between, as we've talked about, people's well-being, their education, their sleep. All of these things have to come into play. And that means that when we talk about designing, putting together teams that are going to be hired to do this work, who's at that table, when are they at that table, and what purpose are they being given is so important. So we're talking about changing the contract structure, changing our procurement processes, changing how we fund these projects, fundamentally creating more cooperation, collaboration, open book, outcome-oriented, long-term outlook-oriented values, and having the people who are going to live in these homes, in these communities at the table, not being built for in some kind of paternalistic way. Like these are all members of our community and having people at the table. So what I'm seeing in the community land trust space, retrofits and building, I think is really important. And I'm really inspired by the work that's being done there. And there is a lot more. So the retrofit, the panelization, there's a lot of attention on panelization and modern methods of construction now, as Planet Homes calls it, which is great. And what's interesting to me is you cannot successfully do a project that has a high offsite constructed component without having people collaborate early on and bringing people to the table. And I think the same thing's true for achieving high energy efficiency cost effectively as well. So hopefully that will accelerate that collaboration, openness, and the cooperation rather than competition and perspective that we've been relying on space.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Yeah, Tom, over to you.
Sorry, I think you're gonna jump in there. Yeah, and okay, I got two points I'll make. First off, I think as far as like enablement of the success, certainly in our case, I'll touch on one maybe technical aspect and one more like human aspect of it. And it's built on Melinda's point about you need to understand like the building, the home as a system. I think one of the things I take away from working in the space that I work in is that I think often those of us that work in energy efficiency think that the baseline conditions of homes that we go into or buildings is that they're always like, they're healthy, they're safe, they're durable, and then you can just go in and layer in energy efficiency. But I tell you, I don't think that's often the case, and it's certainly not been my experience working in public housing. A lot of the housing is substandard. So you don't go in properly with the team and with the mindset that, for example, you got to deal with critical repair first, especially if it's been deferred, then frankly, you're not going to get the benefits. The benefits of energy efficiency just won't persist. They won't endure over time otherwise. And so making sure you've got good plumbing, electrical infrastructure, you're dealing with the structural foundation issues. It is the wild card in that retrofit process, quite frankly. And it was great that we had recognition from our granting agencies that there needs to be some recognition and flexibility of how you go and deploy. You need to address it and some flexibility in how you go about it. The second piece, more on the human side, is that I say the tenant engagement. And I don't mean like coordinating people coming and going. What I mean is that tenant behavior strongly affects the outcome of energy efficiency projects, especially if you're chasing energy targets and savings and carbon reduction. And it was certainly true in this product that I highlighted. We did a separate measurement verification report. It basically reads like a tenant insight report that explains variances between theoretical and actual results. And I guess the takeaway is this: tenants need to be educated on how to use the smart thermostat. They need to be educated that they can close their windows now when it's cold outside because they have central ventilation. They need to know that they've got an energy efficiency place, an energy efficient home, but it's unless they take good care of it, those benefits won't endure, as I mentioned. So as part of this product and all the products we do at Trim Tab, we always do a 3-month post. I don't want to call inspection. We go and talk to tenants. We leave them afraid. We talk to them about how they use the place, about that fresh air machine on the wall. We leave them a fridge magnet. We track the energy costs. There's just a human element to change that you can't ignore.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And we're going to turn to Joshua now. And what I'm curious to pick up on, Josh, because you're coming at this from like an industrial landscape perspective and business landscape. I'm curious on the similarities and on that. So I'm adding a little layer into your question.
And I think just to further touch on what the other people on the call have touched on, it really, education is a very key. We work in multiple sectors. I've done residential units. We've done schools, hospitals, universities, refineries, pulp mills. So we've done a wide range. And the very first thing I think is visibility. So actually understanding where their energy loss is happening and how much that energy loss is. And then being able to look at that from a different lens. A lot of our clients will say, we've walked by this concern, we've walked by this area. And until you take that step to understanding, you really don't quantify, what you know and what you're looking at on a daily basis. Conducting proper assessments and proper performance reviews, it gives decision makers that ability to make educated decisions. And then the other thing for our program is the simplicity and the payback of it. Oftentimes our fossil fuel burning systems, we see a 2-year or less return on investment for these projects. In the environment and the current landscape, especially in our industrial sector workers, that's a huge benefit for Canadians and communities. We're helping the operation costs of businesses to make them more competitive in a global market. With the last few years, that means more now than it probably has in the past. The paybacks are a nice thing, low cost, non-destructive for most facilities, and be able to deliver immediate returns. As soon as they start performing installation, installing installation, they see that. So our clients really enjoy the potential savings. And one of the biggest things that I can talk to over the years of doing this is just having the success of having that project, the first project done. And like the others have alluded to, once you've getting a project underway and you can show the success of it, it really builds confidence, not only for that client to do more and more, but really other clients within that industry or within that space of what the capabilities are and how it can benefit them.
Great. That's an awesome launching point for where I wanted to seed the conversation. And part of that is, despite these successes, and the three of you are only three of a relatively large sector experiencing these successes across the country. And yet we're only scratching the surface of what can and needs to be done really to scale across our full kind of industrial built and home built environments. If we give ourselves, and I'm gonna be ambitious, if we give ourselves 10 years to truly transform, I know it'll take longer than that, but let's think ambitious. If we give ourselves 10 years to like truly transform the scale at which we're implementing these kinds of projects, what's needed to really help us get beyond this 1% retrofit rate, or like really just scratching the surface to actually transforming our built environments and industries? Tom, I'm going to get you to kickstart that little dream project.
Sure. Sounds good. I'm all good with ambition. Okay, 2 things I'll touch on. If we're going to talk about how you scale this work up on so we can get beyond traditional retrofit rates. First off, I'll just talk about the planning side. I think asset planning, speaking specifically for the sector I work in, but I imagine it's true outside of public housing is just asset planning needs to recognize the need for retrofits first and foremost. Like in my experience, see a lot of building condition assessments and capital reserve studies and things that they don't even account for the need yet to modernize building envelopes and mechanical systems. They need to ultimately replace those baseboard heaters with heat pumps, that sort of thing. They're more focused on, I find, meeting minimum requirements. I don't want to maybe make an unfair blanket generalization, but I do see several instances of this. And so if you're not accounting for it in the planning process, then how are you expected to ever get around to implementing it or funding it, right? So I'd say that's the first thing. The second piece is, and this is frankly quite a challenge in the social housing space, given that we're at a point where a lot of the mortgages are paid off and there's a new regime beginning, is just coming up with a funding model that will allow housing providers to just renew their assets to a higher standard. There a lot of the large capital funding that is available through agencies does tend to get absorbed by the larger housing providers, and that's natural. I think that's to be expected. But there's also hundreds of private nonprofits that are out there that don't have the capacity to pursue those opportunities. And I think you want to make sure that they are looked after. They've proven to be really good at stretching their dollars. They're catalysts for change and innovation. But I think they're going to have to band together in order to figure and pool the resources to come up with a funding model that doesn't have them wholly reliant on municipal subsidies as higher levels of government sort of exit the picture, and get more community support. Because I think we got to tell that story and draw those links, especially when we're talking the deeply affordable stuff, the space I work in, like RGI housing. That stuff is really critical to support so that it stems the tide of homelessness, which is a bigger social problem than anything. So you can tell it's something I'm passionate about, but I'll just stop there.
Thanks, Tom. And Josh, over to you.
If we're looking at the next 10 years and hopefully we see some of these action items, for me, with our industry, we're very a niche industry in mechanical insulation. And oftentimes for us, it's treated as an afterthought in both new construction and retrofits. And to Tom's point, just that education and knowledge of the need to do this type of work, whether it be our industry or other industries, there isn't a one-stop shop that's the solution to everything. We have to look at an approach that's bigger than that. And I think mechanical insulation, for example, it's not really seen as what it really is. So it's a critical part of their energy system, and it directly impacts the performance, emissions, and operating costs of the buildings. So for us, if we really think about seriously scaling over the next 10 years, we think that the mindset has to change early on in the process, especially new construction and the design phases. We feel that education is key to that, and these type of webinars and education is so critical to the future, hopefully. And to Tom's point is funding, working across multiple sectors, whether it be industrial, commercial, or housing. The funding there's always a need for it. We do see in every sector, it's the same. It's the bigger organizations have the resources to apply for the funding and receive the funding, which is unfortunate because really everybody and every background needs a piece of that funding to gain their goals.
So true. Thanks, Josh. Melinda.
Yeah, it's an ambitious goal. And so that requires bold, ambitious action. And we're in the situation that we're in terms of our housing affordability crisis, largely because of the financialization of housing and the lack of government direct investment in housing over the last since 1992. We need direct, significant investment in housing. We've decided housing is a human right, and that also comes with the caveat: good, healthy housing is a human right. And so we need to act on it. And that means funding for that planning that is so important at the beginning, as Tom mentioned. We have to plan for what we really want, not just the cheapest price of whatever. We don't want to plan for a dollar amount that we happen to have available for retrofit. We want to plan so this building is going to be climate resilient. People are going to be safe in it for the climate we anticipate. And that requires some thinking at the beginning. But that thinking at the beginning, that process, taking an extra little bit of time to do that is 1,000 times cheaper than realizing that you don't have the money to now rebuild a building that was flooded or severely damaged in a tornado that we now get all the time, or a wildfire. So it pays for itself 1,000,000 times over. So we have to relook at what we're valuing, and we have to be bold with an investment and give the wide range of, as Tom mentioned, the wide range of not-for-profits and community organizations that are doing this work and see what needs to be done in their communities, trusting them and giving them the resources to make it happen, while also having that accountability that the decisions and the investment is going into infrastructure and housing that will be built for the future climate as best as we can to be resilient. So having those kinds of performance metrics for where the money's going, but trusting the people in the communities to do that, they know their communities and to do the planning that will meet their needs.
I was going to add an additional question. I'm not, but I'm going to have you all think about it. And if anyone really wants to type their answer, including all of the viewers, if you want to type your answer into the chat, you'd be welcome to, which is I've been asking a question lately, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you on the future of us to meet these kind of visions and meet this challenge? And so I'm curious if anyone wants to type in an answer, go ahead. But your comments there, Melinda, brought it up for me as I'm like, okay, and how optimistic are we that we can meet that challenge? I'm going to turn to our Q&A box right now and pull a couple of questions. And thank you all for answering those as they've been coming in. I am going to pull one that was answered just because I think it would be great to hear from everyone to hear the answer if you missed it. And that was one that was directed towards you, Josh, which was, does the Insulation Association have software program that can help an evaluator of the current heat loss and what level of insulation is required as economic, I think was the direct question there.
Yeah, so one of the things, I mean, we've been doing assessments dating back to 2017, and one of the things that we didn't expect to come out of it was exactly this question. We look at retrofits and working with our clients, and one of the new things is when they do new projects, it's way more cost effective to increase your insulation on a new construction in the design phase rather than trying to add insulation to an already existing. We can compare that. So our software allows us to look at your current insulation, what an upgrade would save, as well as what an upgrade would cost the facility. And we can compare multiple products, multiple thicknesses, and all that, and give you that cost comparison. But one of the biggest things and biggest demands of what we're seeing is exactly that, where new construction is going to happen. We're still using steam because of the cost to change off a lot in some industries is too costly for them right now. So how do we minimize our carbon emissions in the short term while we're working with that and conserve the most amount of energy? We can definitely do that. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. There was some thumbs up going there too. So I only take that as positive reinforcement there. I'm going to ask this question. It's a big question. So I'm going to let any one of you to jump in and weigh in on it. And that's with the issues of rising costs and energy fuel costs specifically, and depletion of natural resources. Should our governments put more focus on increasing energy efficiency or standards across all sectors? Anyone want to jump in? Melinda, you're unmuted. Do you want to jump in on that one? What do you think?
Sure. Oh, yes. Rising costs and depletion of natural resources. Yes, absolutely. This is part of that holistic approach. And part of we need to reframe really how we look at our economy. Like our resources it's not just trees and minerals and things like that, but it's the people and the time that we have and our health. And I think the challenge is that attention tends to get put on what does the market want us to pay for X board feet of insulation or whatever today, rather than what is this building going to cost us if in 100 years and over the next 100 years, and what are the risks to that, and how do we make sure this building lasts as long as possible? Because there's the cost of what it costs today to buy a piece of wood, if it's going up or down or insulation is going up and down, is like almost irrelevant when you look at the long-term costs of the building. Basically, it's a tiny blip.
And Josh, maybe I'll ask you, invite you in on this question, because I'm curious on what the appetite is in industry and manufacturing for any kind of improved standards with respect to energy efficiency.
I guess I would definitely agree. There definitely has to be something from the government to help motivate and focus the industries to look at that. I'll say the dirty word of carbon tax for industrial clients. In that aspect, it affects businesses in the country with the carbon tax, but it also incentivizes them to do retrofits and to try to produce the least amount of carbon for these manufacturing plants. We see that shift happening with the industrial clients where they are focusing on energy retrofits and different ways to conserve their carbon. And I'm sure carbon tax is a motivation behind that. If that's what leads them to focusing on that, I think it's a great opportunity for them. And for us, we see the government is really not changing from their focus on net zero and that carbon reduction, but there really isn't a focus on basically a how-to guide to how to get there. And I think as we talk about, we're just scratching the surface and we're only 3 people in this, but I think collectively Canada has people in positions to help with that. And I really think that's where we need to focus on is how does each industry get to there? And what's going to be a collective effort.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to keep us moving. So there's this one question. I'm guessing this will be to Melinda or Tom, but how disruptive was using aero barrier to tenants in the retrofit scenario? Tom, is that to you?
Yeah, it's probably, I talked about it earlier, so I'll take this one. I fully expected this question because that's one of the challenges of deploying it in a retrofit scenario, especially where you have shared, you got neighbors on either side. And so I just say it's a manageable coordination. Maybe is the quick answer. We got the process down to the point where we could, especially if you seal the large holes first, that's where the process was so important. I want to make sure everyone understands air barrier is not a panacea, if I said that word the right way. It's not a cure-all, but the way we used it, we were able to get the neighbors out of the house for a couple hours and have extractor fans and other things available as mitigation measures, which we really needed because we had our process. So you just have to, there's some tenant impact management, but it's all manageable within a matter of hours and the results justify it.
Great. Thank you. Okay. We only have a couple minutes left. There is a question on that you all talk about the importance of good, thorough planning from the start. Is there any ability for municipalities, or maybe I'll add any other government, to require this? And so maybe I'll ask that question, and I'm going to invite each of you to just wrap up with some final thoughts on what next. And Tom, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go Josh, Melinda.
I think my sense, just get to touch on the planning piece, is that I think a lot of planning does follow guidance from government, just as a general statement. I think things like building condition assessments, that stuff's following, I think, guidance from the province, at least it does in Ontario. So I do think to address some of the planning challenges, I do think it begins with having the right regulatory construct in place and the policy direction, quite frankly. Just in terms of the final thought, I was chopping at the bit to actually answer your earlier question, Lindsay, about was this a good time to promote conservation? I wanted to shout out and say this is a golden opportunity to promote energy conservation right now with the way the world's going. Yeah. Maybe even fuel switching, depending on whether it's transportation or home heating or whatever, when you're staring down a geopolitical environment that is draining supply. And I think the reality is this, I think there's actually less supply. So there has to be less consumption. It's a necessity, I think, just with the basic law of economics. So I think this is certainly a time that we should be promoting the value of energy efficiency and conservation. Let's stop there.
Good. Thanks. So super quickly, Josh, and then Melinda, final thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's the ability. Again, I keep talking about collaboration and everybody working together. I think that's the key. I don't think there's a turnkey one-stop shop for all these solutions. I think there has to be more dialogue between government agencies and industry leaders as far as building that map as to how do we make things in place that make sense. And one of the things, especially in our industry, that we see is what is regulated is usually very old. So they're not looking at new products. They're not looking at new ideas. So we're doing retrofits, but we're looking at older products and older models. So sometimes the fixes we're making is still out of date by the time the fixes are completed. So I think there has to be more dialogue.
Thanks. And Melinda?
Final thoughts. I think, Tom and said as well, and Joshua, we are in a golden moment right now, and we have an opportunity to really make some big changes. But there's pressure on both sides. The municipal governments, as I think Michelle was in the chat pointed out, are being further restricted by some provincial governments in terms of what incentives they can provide for energy efficiency. Our rules are changing. On the other hand, the International Energy Agency told people to carpool and take public transit last week, and the Globe put an editorial in saying that was a great idea. Things are moving, and which means that it may feel fractured and disruptive, but that disruption means that there's cracks opening and we can really take advantage and insert ourselves in those. places. My dog just did that. So when you asked about optimism or what am I optimistic about, I'm an eternal optimist, but I really like how Rebecca Solnit talks about hope, US writer, and she talks about it in terms of never surrendering, basically, that this is those of us who are in energy efficiency and climate resilience, it can feel like a hard struggle and be very discouraging at times when you read the climate news, but there's a power in thinking of it as being relentless and continuing no matter what, because that's what we do. And when we work together, the collaboration, community connection, we have been driven apart as individuals and communities by the neoliberal and the power structures that have been growing in our society, and finding ways to connect to your neighbors and your community and people who are value aligned and doing what you want to do is an enormous strength and fuels us all doing good things. I look forward to reach out to me. Anybody there wants to make some good trouble and be relentless in this journey.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. I couldn't have said it better myself, so I'm going to not try and wrap us up there. I do want to make one more plug for our House of Commons petition. If you haven't signed it, please do. A petition is but one step in the multi-pronged activities that we need to really drive change. Certainly do jump on board and share your stories as well. We want to hear them. We have our next Discovery is coming up in 2 weeks' time, and April 24th, and it will be unpacking energy efficiency narratives. So really diving into the communications. How do we tell our stories and really heighten and amplify the narratives that are out there in the space? So thank you again, Josh, Melinda, Tom. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and good luck. I know we'll be seeing each other around, so thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.